Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Carnivore Josh, and today I want to go over the importance of salt. I want to go over the biblical significance of salt. I want to go over my experience, electrolytes, and refined versus unrefined salt. So stay tuned and let's get into it. Alright, so first I want to go over refined salt. Most salts sold in the grocery store are refined garbage that are devoid of nutrients. The refining process consists of washing, drying, crushing, and screening. It's also worth noting that most salts are very high in sodium, and oversalting your food can lead to increased blood pressure and other heart-related issues. Regular sea salt is usually refined through a chemical process. The salt is rinsed first in a brine solution to wash out calcium and other impurities, and then rinsed again in actual bay water to dissolve the magnesium chloride. What you're left with is 99.8% of pure sodium chloride sea salt. Refined means processed. So now that you know that refined salt is unhealthy, let's go over what you should be buying. Unrefined salt. Celtic sea salt is a great example of an unrefined salt. It is naturally moist salt harvested from the Atlantic seawater off the coast of Brittany, France. This type of salt is harvested using the Celtic method of wooden rakes, allowing no metal to touch the salt. It is naturally air and sun dried in clay ponds and gathered with wooden tools to preserve its living enzymes. Because it is unrefined, it contains all of the 84 beneficial live elements found in seawater. It contains no chemicals, preservatives, or any other additives. The best thing about Celtic sea salt is that it's 40% naturally lower in sodium while simultaneously having plenty of the trace minerals such as magnesium, potassium, calcium, and trace amounts of the rest of the elements. You're less likely to overeat sodium and more likely to get all of your electrolytes. Unrefined equals healthy. Salt with a lot of moisture that preserves its minerals. Iodized salt is garbage. It's basically just refined salt with added supplemental iodine, which you do not need if you're eating a carnivore diet, or if your diet includes lots of eggs, fish, or dairy. Himalayan pink salt is actually another decent salt. The only problem is that depending on the brand, it can have more sodium than Celtic sea salt and contain a significantly lower amount of magnesium and potassium. Now let's get into electrolytes. Just like with everything else, you should get all your vitamin, mineral, and electrolyte needs from diet alone. But when somebody refers to a carnivore diet, it's usually beef, salt, and water. Salt is actually another really important part of our diet as well. Our ancestors would seek out salt deposits to gather and eat it or use it for a multitude of different purposes, including the preservation of food. Animals would also seek them out as well. Okay, so grain-fed versus grass-fed beef. Grain-fed beef may be lower in certain vitamins and minerals than grass-fed, especially electrolytes. More supplementation may be needed, aka just add more salt. But the difference between grain and grass-fed is very minuscule. So exercise depletes electrolytes, and depending on how hard you train, whether you are a bodybuilder or a marathon runner, you may need to supplement more salt. Or you can just try eating more beef, but you still neat salt. So why would you spend $30+ and waste it on an electrolyte supplement when you can just eat more beef and salt? More simple, right? Well, the only reason I can think of for this is sometimes people like to have a tasty beverage, and that's okay. If you're going to do that, just make sure that your electrolyte supplement does not have any sugars or preservatives, and just try to keep it as healthy as possible. Try to keep out those vegetable juices and other toxic materials. So, yeah. So now I kind of just want to go over my experience with salt and electrolyte supplements, and yeah. So those who suffer with what I had, which is GERD and gastritis, we have a hard time handling pretty much any kind of food. And the problem is most electrolyte supplements have all kinds of sugars, vegetables, and other nasty preservatives inside them. And those just cause my GERD to flare up all the time. The problem with unflavored electrolyte supplements is that they're basically just salt water and they don't really taste that great to me. I would much rather just put more salt on my steak. Another problem with electrolyte supplements is that they can contain too much sodium. And sometimes it can be a problem depending on your height, weight, age, sex, activity level, etc. Because I participate in heavy physical training, I do kind of a typical bodybuilding type split in the gym. I lift weights. Because of that, I required more electrolytes on my carnivore journey. I had headaches and muscle cramps 4 months into my carnivore lifestyle, which I attributed to a lack of magnesium. After adding Celtic sea salt into my diet, the muscle cramps and the headaches literally went away within a few days. And it's also worth noting that I currently eat a conventionally raised beef carnivore diet here in the United States. And our conventionally raised beef is of less quality than other beef. Because I'm poor, I've chosen this route. But even despite all that, I have become the healthiest person I've ever been, regardless of the small difference between grain-fed and grass-fed beef. Sometimes you just need a little bit more of a certain electrolyte because you do a lot of running or you do a lot of heavy lifting at work or you exercise. Everybody's different. Sometimes you need more of a certain electrolyte, and that's where salt comes in. Alright, so now my favorite part. Let's go over the biblical significance of salt. So salt was highly valuable in biblical times because it was so hard to come by. You couldn't just go to some random grocery store. You couldn't go to Walmart or Albertsons to get it. The Egyptians were the first to make the discovery that salt could be used as a preservative. They started pouring salt on their fish and used it to preserve the fish for longer periods of time, as they didn't have any refrigerators back then. Salt was highly valuable by every culture in biblical times, including Jesus and his disciples in the New Testament. Salt is mentioned over 47 times in the scripture. So if you read Ezekiel chapter 47, it highlights the importance of the Dead Sea's salt. So the Hebrew people harvested the salt by pouring seawater into pits and letting the water evaporate until only salt was left. They used the mineral for seasoning and as a preservative. In addition, salt was used to disinfect wounds as well. Let's go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. Ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men. In biblical days, loyalty and friendship was sealed with salt. Salt is synonymous with the word covenant, as in God's covenant with us. And it also means holiness and faithfulness. As Christians, we are to be the salt of the world, to go and spread the gospel so that the flavors of God's grace can be experienced by the whole world. As Christians, we are the preserving agent to carry the gospel, just as salt. So just like salt preserves food, man preserves the gospel. So many times throughout the scripture, salt is used in good metaphors to reference all kinds of things like friendship, loyalty, preservation, cleansing, all kinds of things. And when the Lord uses metaphors in good ways like this toward a certain thing, you know that that thing is probably a good thing. We are the salt of the earth. So now that we've established all of that, we can now recognize that not only is salt important on a carnivore diet, but it's important on any diet, all diets. And you need to make sure that you get a healthy, natural salt that isn't processed and isn't going to cause you any health issues. Personally, I recommend Celtic Sea Salt's Gourmet Kosher brand for its increased magnesium content, especially for those of you who do a lot of physical activity, such as myself. You can get this salt at supersetyourlife.com. Go help support our fellow Christian carnivores, small business. And yeah, so up above I'll show you guys a picture of supplements I used to take before carnivore and supplements I take now. And yeah, that's basically it, guys. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. I will be happy to answer them. And stay tuned for more videos. Thank you for watching. Carnivore Josh, out.